On that clear November day in 1961, the crew of the Greek cargo ship Theo was on a routine voyage in the waters of the Bahamas when the second officer, Nikolaos Spakidakis, spotted something unusual through his binoculars. In the vast ocean, surrounded by endless blue, a tiny raft was drifting. What the crew saw as they approached made even the most experienced sailors hold their breath. On a small cork float, barely clinging to life, lay a fair-haired girl. Her skin was burned by the scorching sun, covered in blisters. Her lips cracked from thirst and her body temperature had risen to a dangerous 105 degrees Fahrenheit. But she was still breathing. 11-year-old Terry Jo Dupereau had spent almost 4 days alone in the open ocean without food or water, becoming both a witness and a victim of one of the most shocking crimes of that time. One of the crew members managed to take a photograph of this moment, a tiny figure floating in the vast ocean, a picture that would soon make headlines in newspapers around the world. It all began as an ordinary family trip. Dr. Arthur Dupereau, a successful ophthalmologist from Green Bay, Wisconsin, had long dreamed of showing his family the beauty of the Bahamas. Together with his 38-year-old wife Jean and their 3 children, 14-year-old Brian, 11-year-old Terry Jo, and 7-year-old Renee, they had been saving money for this journey for a long time. Finally, they rented a luxurious 60-foot yacht called Bluebell. The captain of the vessel was Julian Harvey, a 44-year-old war veteran who seemed like the perfect man for the job. He was accompanied by his new wife, Mary Dean, whom he had married only 4 months earlier. The first few days of the trip felt like a dream. The family enjoyed snorkeling near Great Abaco Island, collecting colorful seashells on white sandy beaches. Dr. Dupereau even shared his plans with a local commissioner. They were planning to return for Christmas. No one could have imagined that behind Captain Harvey's friendly smile hid a monster. He had already been married 5 times, and each of his wives had died under mysterious circumstances. His yachts and boats, always insured for large amounts, had a strange tendency to sink, while Harvey himself miraculously survived each time and collected the insurance payouts. On the evening of November 12th, little Terry Jo went to bed early in her cabin. She had no idea that this small decision would save her life. In the middle of the night, she was awakened by the heart-wrenching screams of her brother. "Help, Daddy, help!" Almost 50 years later, in an interview with Fox News, she recalled, "It was the kind of scream where you instantly know something terrible is happening." As it was later discovered, Captain Harvey had chosen that night to carry out his horrifying plan. First, he killed his new wife, Mary, the woman he had recently insured for a large sum of money. He planned to throw her body overboard and report that she had accidentally fallen into the sea. But Dr. Dupereau accidentally witnessed the murder. When he tried to stop Harvey, the captain killed him too. The rest of the family rushed to the scene after hearing the commotion, and the killer could not leave any witnesses alive. When the terrified Terry Jo climbed onto the deck, she saw a nightmare unfolding before her. Her mother and brother were lying in pools of blood. Harvey roughly shoved the girl back into her cabin, where she curled up in fear on her bed. Soon she sensed that something was wrong. The room was filling with water. Harvey had deliberately opened the ship's sea valves to sink the yacht and erase all evidence of his crime. At the last moment, Harvey threw a rope from the lifeboat to the girl, but as Terry Jo's friend Richard Logan later discovered, this was not an act of mercy. When he saw the girl on deck, he realized, "My God, there's a chance she might survive. She had to be killed," Logan recounted. Harvey planned to kill the girl while she was holding onto the rope, but Terry Jo instinctively let go. In complete darkness, battling the waves and her own fear, she managed to untie a small cork float just before Bluebell disappeared beneath the waves. Wearing only a light blouse and pink pants, she was now alone in the middle of the ocean. This was the beginning of her true fight for survival. The first night was the most terrifying. Waves crashed over the tiny raft, soaking Terry to the bone. The salt water burned her skin, and the cold wind cut through her like a knife. She had no idea which direction she was drifting, clinging tightly to the nearly weightless cork raft that was her only hope. When the sun rose, a new problem came: thirst. Water was everywhere around her, but she couldn't drink it. Her lips became coated with a salty crust and began to crack. She tried moistening them, but the salt only made her thirst worse. By noon, the scorching sun had turned the raft into a burning skillet. With no protection from the heat, she could feel her skin beginning to blister. To escape the heat, she occasionally dangled her legs in the water. It helped cool her down, but every time she looked into the dark depths below, terror gripped her. What was lurking beneath the surface? At one point, she saw a fin gliding nearby, and her heart nearly stopped. But it wasn't a shark, it was dolphins. They circled her raft for hours as if protecting her. At night, the temperature dropped sharply, and Terry began to shiver. To stay warm, she tried to move, but any sudden movement threatened to tip over the fragile raft. She learned to shift her weight carefully, balancing on the tiny surface. The stars above were her only companions through those long, endless hours. By the end of the second day, hunger became unbearable. Her stomach cramped painfully. She saw small fish swimming past, but there was no way to catch them. Occasionally, she spotted floating bits of seaweed and wished there might be something edible among them, but they were always just out of reach. On the third day, hallucinations began. Her exhausted mind started playing cruel tricks on her. She thought she could hear the voices of her parents calling her name. Islands appeared in the distance, but when she tried to paddle toward them, they vanished into thin air. Once, she was convinced she saw a ship on the horizon and even tried to scream, but her parched throat could not make a sound. The worst moments, however, were when the ocean became completely still, when the water was as smooth as glass, and the sun turned the world into a blazing desert. Time seemed to stop. There was no movement, no sound, only the endless blue stretching in every direction. Terry began to doubt whether the world beyond this watery prison even existed. 3 days before her rescue, Harvey had already been found in a lifeboat, along with the body of little Renee. He told authorities a dramatic story about a sudden storm and a fire on board. He claimed he had heroically tried to save the passengers, that he had found the girl's body in the water and desperately tried to revive her. Everyone believed the brave captain, a war veteran with an allegedly impeccable reputation. When Terry Jo was finally lifted aboard the Theo, she was so weak that she couldn't stand. Her skin was covered in blisters from severe sunburns, her lips were cracked and bleeding, and her clothes had become stiff with salt. Her body temperature had risen to a dangerous 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Doctors later said that just a few more hours in the ocean and she wouldn't have survived. Terry Jo spent a week in a Miami hospital, recovering from severe dehydration and sunburns. It was only 7 days after her rescue that the police were finally able to speak to the brave girl, and the truth about that horrific night was finally revealed. Meanwhile, Harvey was staying at a motel in Florida. When the news of Terry Jo's survival reached the shore, he heard about it on the radio. The murderer turned pale and stammering muttered, "My God, that's just wonderful." The next day, he was found dead in his motel bathroom. He had slit his own throat. The investigation uncovered a shocking pattern of Harvey's crimes. It turned out that he had narrowly escaped being charged in the death of one of his previous wives in a car accident. His yachts and boats had a suspicious tendency to sink, always resulting in large insurance payouts. But this time, his plan had fallen apart. He had not accounted for the strength of a little girl. In memory of the Dupereau family, a commemorative plaque was placed in Fort Howard Memorial Park in Wisconsin. The inscription reads, "In memory of the family of Arthur Dupereau, lost near the Bahamas on November 12, 1961. They are forever found in the hearts of their loved ones, resting with the one who is eternal life. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." For many years, Terry Jo remained silent about the nightmare she had endured. It wasn't until the 1980s that she began to share her story with close friends. This led her to seek psychological support and eventually to co-author the book Alone, Orphaned on the Ocean with Richard Logan. Almost 50 years later, during a book signing event, something incredible happened. "Last month we were signing books," she recalled in an interview, "and some of my former teachers, people I worked with 49 years ago, came just to check on me. They told me they regretted not being able to talk to me or help me back then. In those days, they were told to pretend nothing had happened. That experience changed her outlook on life forever. When you spend 4 days alone with the ocean, you either break or you become stronger," she later said. "I learned to never give up, even when it feels like all hope is gone, because hope is always there, You just don't always see where it's coming from. Today, Terry Jo, now known as Tara Fassbender, continues to work with water despite the nightmare she endured. I was never afraid, she says. I was an outdoor child, and I loved the water. I had strong faith. I believed in God and prayed for Him to help me. And I just went with the flow. Her story has become a symbol of the incredible strength of the human spirit and the will to survive. I always believed that I was saved for a reason, she says, but it took me 50 years to find the strength to share my story and give others hope. And somewhere in the dark waters of the Bahamas, Bluebell still rests, a silent witness to one of the most extraordinary survival stories and the exposure of a brutal crime in maritime history.